In 1972, Germany hosted the Summer Olympics. It was supposed to help the world forget about the Holocaust and Nazi regime, and to show the world that they were onto a new democratic government. On September 5th, at 4 o'clock in the morning, a group of 5 Palestinians, known as Black September, invaded an apartment where 11 Israeli athletes were staying. Two of the 11 Israelis were killed in the room, while 9 were kidnapped. In return for the 9 hostages, Black September wanted the release of 200 Arabs that were held in prison by the Israelis. German police gave in to some of their demands in hope of getting the hostages safe at the airport where the terrorists wanted to get away. Once at the airport, there was a big shootout among the police and terrorists. The terrorists managed to shoot 5 of the 9 hostages and blow up one of the helicopters where 4 of the hostages were. And right after, they were all shot by the police.
Why was the Israeli team targeted by Black September?
Just prior to the 72 Olympics, about 5 years actually before, there had been what was called the Six-Day War between Israel and the Palestinians. And if you don't know much about the history of Israel, Israel was established in 1948. The British carved out a parcel of land in the Middle East between Lebanon and I believe Saudi Arabia, but I'm not sure. You might check on that. And it was set up as a Jewish homeland. And people in that region who had been occupying that territory for centuries were not at all happy about that. And so tensions from 1948 all the way through now, there has been a lot of tension in that region because the Israelis are unwanted there by the people who had been living there for centuries. On the other hand, the Israelis felt that they had a birthright and a homeland there because prior to the settling of that area, that had been the Jewish homeland for centuries in the years prior to the migration of other ethnicities into that region. So there was a lot of hostility, and as there still is. I mean, that region is always very volatile. And so we're talking about 5 years after the Six-Day War, and the Black September group was a militant group of Palestinians who decided that a way to express their dissatisfaction with the Israeli occupation of the West Bank was to make this grand show of force during the most widely watched and most widely scrutinized sporting event that occurs every 4 years, which of course is the Olympics. And so they felt that they would make the most impact if they were to pull off this kidnapping during something that the entire world was watching.
What impact did the event have on society after it happened?
Well, as I said before, the entire world really was watching. I remember getting up. I was very much into the Olympics, and I remember getting up during that summer and watching the Olympics, basically the whole day, except when I was working. And I got up that morning, and I noticed that there were no sporting events on. There were news broadcasts by Jim McKay, who was the sports anchor, but he was doing what appeared to be news broadcasts, and there were crawls along the bottom of the TV, and there was a camera focused on a van, and I was thinking, what's going on here? And that was the coverage of the kidnapping, and then eventually the coverage of the attempt to free the hostages, and then eventually the massacre of the hostages. And you can imagine if tens of millions of people are watching this live on their televisions, just what an impact it had. And it really, I think, underscored for people who perhaps previously thought of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict of being something totally separate of themselves, something that was happening in a faraway land that didn't really impact them at all. They began to realize that it was something that was very much a part of their own lives, because it was impacting on a sporting event about which they cared a lot. And so I think it was a really educational experience for a lot of people in terms of the political turmoil in the Middle East. And then from that point on, obviously people became more knowledgeable and more aware of that. And now I don't think that there's anybody, probably unless he's been living in a cave, who doesn't recognize rather, that there are some really volatile issues that are happening in